Welcome one, welcome all to the dad show that trumps them all. It is
all of them.
Every single one. It is Dads Watching Sports. Thank you so much for checking out the show. It is Sunday, the 25th of April in the year 2021, the year of our Lord, Kyle. And it's a great time to be talking some dads and some watching and some sports.
Watching? I'm sorry.
Watching. I'll talk watching here in just a little bit.
Okay, if you can bring this back around full circle, then good for you.
I will. He's Kyle Castles. I'm Michael Draper, and it is episode 62. That is 6-2, and we are glad that you are joining us as always. And we are broadcasting live on the Off the Ball Network. Let's get right into it, Kyle. So, Kyle, as I'm, I feel like we kind of talk about this every week. As I try to figure out a way to put together the topics, kind of what's going on in the world, what's going on in our lives, what's going on in the world of sports. And it something just kind of blurred up on maybe towards the end of the week last week that caught my attention. And it did so for a couple of reasons. The first reason was just like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that we were doing that. And the second one was like, oh, this would be a great topic for our local history teacher to discuss on the program. So, Kyle, the topic I have for us is, we have the District of Columbia, also known as D.C. It's where our nation's capital resides. Not a state, but it is up for debate on whether it be to be a state. So, as our local resident history teacher, what the heck is going on? Why is it not a state? Why would it be considered a state? Will it become a state? Does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Please enlighten us all.
All right. So I'll start with doesn't matter. Yeah, it matters. And I will get there at the end.
Ooh, I like that.
All right. So here's the deal. For a territory to become a state, that's an act of Congress. This is an interesting case. So before I get into why it's that interesting, let's talk about why there is a contingent of people that want to see D.C. become a state. Here's the deal. About 700,000 people live in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
While that's not greater than many states, it's more than Wyoming and Vermont. It puts them on par with Alaska-ish. Those people do not have a voting member in Congress. So the question is, are they being represented? Because they're still being, right? So like the whole idea of no taxation without representation that we've heard ever since we were little. And it's this whole thing about like we went and had a revolution because we were being taxed without representation in British Parliament. Could they say the same thing?
Very nice.
Right? So they have no voting members in Congress. I believe they have one person that sits in the House and can make arguments in the House but can't vote. And one person that sits in the Senate can make arguments in the Senate but can't vote. I believe, if I remember right, that's how they do it.
Okay.
They can vote for president. So, I mean, if you want to be like, oh, no, you have some representation, we could argue that.
Sure.
But they can vote for president. So here's the reason it works that way. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says, and I'm going to actually copy this, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. So that such district does not say state. It says district. That's why we call it a District of Columbia. It's Washington District of Columbia, right?
Right.
So that's why we call it a district. So what I said, for a territory to become a state, it takes an act of Congress. I don't necessarily think an act of Congress is going to make D.C. a state. I think we're going to have a constitutional amendment, which is going to take a whole lot more work than just an act of Congress. You got to get, 60%, 30 states to sign on and say, yeah, we're down with this, and you're not going to get 30 states to do so. If I'm right, I could be wrong, and they may be able to do it just through an act of Congress. And I'm not a constitutional law person at all. I teach AP government, but I'm not constitutional law expert. So the way I understand it, it's going to take a constitutional amendment. The way it might happen, I could be completely wrong, and I'm okay with that. Here's the thing, like bare bones reason for all this, the Democrats want it because Washington, D.C. is very blue, and it's going to get them 2 extra senators. What have they been fighting for so long is trying to win majority in the Senate. They kind of sort of have it with a 50-50 split. And for those that don't know, the vice president is always there to, not always there, but is the one to break ties in the Senate.
Yep.
So with a 50-50 split in the Senate plus Kamala Harris, there she gets to split the tie. And so they have a majority in the Senate, but they have worked really hard just to get to 50-50. It's hard for them because there are more red states than blue states right now. It's hard for them to get a majority in the Senate. House is easy. Senate's hard for the Democrats. This would make it a whole lot easier because they could bring in and get 2 extra senators out of D.C. That's why it matters.
Sure.
Because we could see a quick flip of the Senate that makes it really hard for the red states to get a majority.
And this history lesson brought to you by Dads Watching Sports. For those out there that are looking to be history majors, you can check us out each and every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and we'll give you a little history lesson. No, and we won't go into this in detail because it's not what the show is about. But I thought it was interesting as someone who doesn't really follow a lot of that closely, and especially politics. I can't anymore. It was interesting to see. So last question on this. If you're a betting man, Kyle, you were going to go place a bet on this, would you say this does happen, this doesn't happen? And then if it does, when do you think it happens?
If it can be done by an act of Congress, meaning we got to pass it in the House, which it's done now, and pass it in the Senate, which we haven't done. And then it's got to go to the desk of the president who signs it. If that's all we need, it gets done pretty quick. So Joe Manchin, who is the senator from West Virginia, and Kristen Sinema, the senator from Arizona, both of which are Democrats, seem to be the most, we used to call them blue dog Democrats. I don't know if we still call them blue dog Democrats, but essentially like the more conservative Democrats. They've kind of been the one to slow things down while the Democrats are trying to push things through. I don't think they would slow this down. I don't think. I could be wrong. I don't think they would. So I think they would vote for it, even if we got 50-50 in the Senate. Kamala Harris comes in, breaks that. They may need 60 votes out of the Senate. I don't know my rules well enough. I apologize. My congressional rules, my senatorial rules well enough. To know for sure. They may need 60 votes. If they do, it's not going to happen. If they don't, if they can get it done in 51, it happens quick. If they need a constitutional amendment, it's going to take a very, very long time. So it depends.
There you go, everyone. Mr. Castles goes to Washington. He tells you all about it and whether it will be a state or not, and we'll figure that out. All right, Kyle.
I know. I just like everybo's out. Nobody cares about the show anymore. I bored everybody to death.
That's quite all right. I think you did a wonderful job in explaining that, and I know that there were a lot of people that are very interested in it and wanted to know our takes for sure. All right, Kyle. Last week I said it's my goal on this podcast to get someone from All Pro Dad on this show, and until that happens, every week we're highlighting an article or a segment or something, because I get like 5 of these emails a day, and it's great content.
Wait. If we're going to highlight their website every week until we get a guest host, why would they send anybody to us?
Because they out of thanks and out of like, man, this could be a great partnership. All Pro Dads Watching Sports, man. I mean, come on.
Okay.
They just work together. So here we go. I came across this article earlier this week. It was 5 times to never say no to your kids. We all hate saying no. I mean, I feel like I have the conversation on a daily basis of like, I'm not saying no because I want to be mean. I'm saying no because of your safety, or you don't need 5 treats after dinner, or, whatever have you. And so these were the 5 times to never say no to your kids. I'll read these and then we can kind of discuss, do we do these, that kind of stuff. Number 1 is when they ask, can you play with me? So when your child comes up and says, hey, Dad, will you sit down and play cars with me? Or will you sit down and play with the trains? Or will you sit down and do this and play? Don't say no. When they ask, can you help me? Definitely a tough one to say no to there. When they ask, can you lay down with me? So like you're at the end of the day, you're tired, probably haven't eaten dinner yet. If you haven't had a chance to, you're putting your kids down to sleep. They're like, Dad, will you please just lay down just for a second? It's a tough one. When they ask, can I help you? That's one I want to discuss here in a second. And then when they ask, can I talk to you? Which obviously you and I, in the stage of life we're in with our kids, probably not getting a whole lot of that can I talk to you one yet, but that's going to come up eventually, without a doubt. So as you look across all those, and again, I know I definitely want to, can I help you? But as you're kind of looking through those, anything that jumps out at you or that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, the can I talk to you? I don't think I've ever heard that question come out of any of my kids' mouths, but the first 4 I've definitely heard, and I have definitely said no to all 4 of those questions. Which,
as we all have.
I read this and I go, wow, I am being attacked as a father right now. I mean, I'll start at the beginning. Can you play with me? Like, I would love to always be able to just stop what I'm doing and play with them, but sometimes, there's other things going on. And so that's difficult. Can you help me? I say no to this one probably too much, but and the article talks about I want my kids running to me for help no matter what, even when they're older. Of course, when helping them, I want to encourage them to become independent and grow. So I really struggle finding that line, and maybe you can speak to this, where I want them to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
But I also don't want them to think that I'm never going to help them.
Yeah.
So there's a line there that's hard to find. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think what I've, at least in my mind, I feel like is a success story with these is like if one of our kids asks, "Hey, Daddy, can you help me?" If it's something that I know that I've seen them accomplish before, then I'll definitely be like, "No, you can do that. You do that. You can do that easily." Like getting dressed, like our daughter. I mean, she's 4 years old. You can get yourself dressed. But I also think if it's one of those things that either I haven't seen them do before or that I know that they have struggled with or could potentially struggle with, I'll usually help. And then I'll try to say like, here, let me show you how to do this. So then that way you can learn it yourself and then move forward and do it. Like my daughter asks if she can help me tie my shoes all the time. And I'll get to the, can you help me or can I help you? And so instead of like just letting her sit there and kind of fumble with it, I'm like, all right, well, let me show you how to help me do this. And I feel like that way it kind of, I feel like that kind of works its way into kind of what you were talking about there.
Yeah. So yeah, and he says, I'm assuming, yeah, Joe, who wrote this, but I never want to give the impression that they're bothering me by asking for help. And that's the big thing. Like,
yeah.
It's okay to come ask, but was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Jack came down here with his pajama shirt because it was inside out. And at that moment, I just said, yes, I will turn it right side out. He has turned his shirt right side out. He knew Daddy was down here on the computer and wanted to come see what I was doing.
That's right. Yeah.
So he's, that's one of those things. Can you lay down with me? I don't get that one as much, but I get, can I rock with you?
Mm-hmm.
So especially with Jack, the 4-year-old still wants to be rocked, and I get that.
Yeah.
That is tough because sometimes I just want to go lay down. Sometimes I'm tired. It's been a long day.
Mm-hmm.
That one's difficult. But I will say those, he talks about deeper conversations at bedtime. My wife, Lauren, does so much better job than me getting them to open up during that time. But you can get some really good conversations at bedtime. And that brings us to your question, can I help you? So here you go.
Yeah, and this is one that I struggle with the most because it never fails that our kids want to help do something or whatever kind of when we're like at a time constraint. And so it's like, yes, I need to pause. I need to realize whatever we're in such a hurry for is not that big of a deal. And I need to let them help me do this. But it's also so much easier if I just do this for myself and get this done and get it out of the way and just say, here, watch me. I'll show you how to do this, but watch me, let me do this. Classic example of this happened today. We were at the lake and we were getting ready to leave. And usually what we do on Sundays is we wake up, we wash all the sheets and like the laundry and all that stuff because we don't know who's coming after us. And so we're just kind of cleaning up all day, kind of a periodical or like a continual clean all day on Sundays. And we were getting ready to leave. We had really kind of finished everything. We'd gotten the car packed. We were getting ready to leave this afternoon. And I went down to take the trash out and noticed there was just like some dirt and stuff in the garage. And I saw a broom right there. And so while I was getting the trash can out, I said, hey, Emma, will you grab the broom and start sweeping the leaves out of the garage? She was like, yeah. And so I was like, all right, that'll distract her while I go take the garbage up to the road. So go take the garbage back to the road. And again, this is literally the last step of us leaving. And I see her sweeping and I'm like, all right, sweetie, we'll just give that to daddy. Let me get, and she's like, well, I want to do it. And I said, no, let me do it. And I pulled it away and I swept it out. And after it was over, I sat back and I was like, man, I should have just let her do it. I asked her to do it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And now here I am taking over because I was ready to go and we needed to get in the car. We needed to get out of here. So I later apologized to her for that. But I think that happens very often in our household where they'll ask to do something and I'll either be like, well, no, not right now. We don't have time. Yeah. Or I'll see they're struggling and we need to move this along quickly and take over.
Yeah. And you were tired. You were ready to come home. So I get it.
Yep.
And as long as we here's the thing. And this is one thing. So, Lauren and I are doing a whole lot of talking on, what can we do to be better parents? And the one thing I keep going back to is we're never going to be perfect. It's never going to be right.
Right.
And you said it. You went and you apologized to Emma and just told her, like, hey, look, I took this away after I asked you to do it. Being able to admit that you're wrong to your kid is huge. Because the minute you do that, it tells them, like, it's okay if I mess up. It's okay if I'm not perfect.
Yep.
Right. And that changes the game basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. I try to do that as often as I can, mainly because I screw up a lot. But also, and just like, I mean, I'm sorry, sweetie. Like, yeah, daddy's not perfect. And yeah, I didn't handle that right. And I'm sorry. All right. Last topic before we go to break. And this is a tough one. It came out on what I believe was Thursday night, that former University of Kentucky guard, Boston, Massachusetts native Terrance Clarke had announced for the NBA draft. Had just literally the day before signed with the Clutch agency to represent him. Passed away in a car accident, and we won't get into the details of that because there's no need to. But just somebody who follows that program and has followed that kid for the past couple of years. I mean, just a absolute gut wrenching moment for, you can only imagine, his family, his teammates, that whole team, and really just anyone that knew him. I think it really spoke volumes about that young man, where you had a ton of NBA players commenting on social media about it. The NBA themselves did. It seems like there's some momentum building that they're going to do something at the draft to kind of honor him, maybe incorporate the Celtics because he was a big Celtics fan. But anytime something like this happens, and again, you get a 19-year-old kid on the verge of realizing his dream, like his lifelong dream, and for that to be taken away. But in our case now, you immediately think about parents, and the old adage of, no parent should ever have to bury their own child like that. That's just gut wrenching beyond. And that's always what it comes back to me is like, man, I cannot imagine the pain that his parents are feeling or grandparents are feeling, because that's just, it's unfathomable. And I hope and pray to God that neither one of us and nobody listening to this show ever has to go through that. But unfortunately, some things like this just happen.
Yeah, I have no clue how I would respond other than just complete grief. You have your child who I'm sure he has things he did wrong growing up, but let's be honest, like he's done everything that you would have wanted him to do to position himself to fulfill his life dream, and then to see that taken away in a moment, it's that would be one of the, if not probably the toughest thing that, and not that like, hey, my kid going to the NBA or, name the professional sport league.
Right.
But like just at 19, you're ready to step into adulthood and you're ready to watch your kid go and succeed at life. And it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And it's unfortunate that these type of moments continue to remind you, that life is so fragile. I mean, just so fragile, and you just never know. And it's, I saw a lot of people posting on social media afterwards, like, hug your kids, hug your family, tell, if there are people you haven't told you love them in a while, tell them you love them, because you just never know. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to the Clarke family and everybody involved. And BJ Boston, his college roommate, one of his best friends, who was also a witness to it all happen, definitely keeping him in our thoughts and prayers as well. So just an unimaginable an event. So we'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports. We've got more to talk about on the episode tonight, but we'll be right back after the break. Big news in the Dad's Watching Sports podcasting world. You've heard us mention it on the show already. We are now part of the Off the Ball Podcast Network. We're super excited to be joining the team of great shows, hopefully adding a little dad flavor to the mix. You can check out Off the Ball Podcast and Off the Ball Network on all your social media sites. Just search Off the Ball Network. And while you're there, give them a like and a follow. You won't regret it. We're back here on Dad's Watching Sports. I am Michael Draper, and he is Kyle Castles. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week. For those that do so, it's Sunday, April 25th, almost to the month of May, which is hard to believe, and we're very excited about that. Kyle, this isn't even part of what we're going to talk about, but you mentioned the month of May, and everybody that's a teacher, they're like, oh, here we go. We're excited. Summer's coming. You counting down the days, and I know this has been probably the hardest and weirdest school year ever. But are you counting down the days, months, seconds, weeks, etc.?
What I will say is I don't know that I've ever seen, and this isn't just at the school I'm at, this is talking to teachers from all over. I don't know that I can remember a time teacher morale has been this low across the country.
Sure.
Whether it's teachers in their own buildings dealing with all of the masks and the protocols that they have to go through daily to try and keep kids and themselves safe, whether it's teachers that have not been in their building at all or didn't get in their building until last month. It is difficult this year. So yeah, we're all counting it down. There's a teacher in my building that decorated her door, not last week, but the week before, with a countdown. And she just pulls a page off the door every day. And I think we're inside of 20 days. And we've got 4 weeks left.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Yeah. Well, I know I mentioned this on the show before, probably in April or May of last year, and I will echo it. So my wife and I, during the whole quarantine when the kids were home, realized very quickly that we were not teachers for a reason, trying to wrangle in our kids. So may God bless you and all of your peers for the outstanding work that you do, and just grinding it out, man.
No.
We thank all of y'all. It's unbelievable what you guys go through, and I can't even imagine what it's been like. So kudos to all of our teachers out there.
I appreciate it, and what most teachers will tell you is we don't do it for the money. We don't do it for the accolades, because there's no money and there's no accolades for teaching. Right. You do it because those kids mean something to you, even though like you did not birth them, you did not create them. Those kids mean something to you, and if without those kids, I love my students, and I tell them that more often than I probably should, because I think they take advantage of it. But sure. I do. I really enjoy my kids, and so I enjoy what I do.
You're telling me 16, 17, 18-year-old takes advantage of you? I couldn't guess that at all. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit and get into some sports talk a little bit here. NBA is really wrapping up. We got about less than a month left in the season. Yeah. Obviously, things are going to be looking different this year with a playoff format. But just a couple of things I wanted to hit on with the NBA as we look at the Eastern and Western conferences. We're going down the stretch of the season, getting into the playoffs, and thinking about who's going to kind of make those runs. So Eastern and Western teams that we feel like will make a run to finish the season, maybe to position themselves at the upper part of the bracket or just in the playoffs, and then we feel like could really make a run going forward. So let's start in the East, and I'll give you mine first because none of mine are – I believe in the top four. I think one team might be the 4 seed. Right now, I got the hottest team in the NBA, Kyle, is the New York Knicks, also known as the Kentucky Wildcat Knicks, with Randall, Quickly, Noel, and the like. So I got the Knicks, man. Randall's playing. Randall could be in the MVP conversation. That guy's playing unbelievable basketball. The Knicks, they're trending. And when was the last time we talked about that? This late in the year, that the Knicks were a team to be threatened with. That brings me to my next team. Another team that's been really hot lately. They've struggled a lot of the year. That's the Celtics. And we know what you got with Kemba, with Jason Tatum, with Jaylen Brown. I mean, that team's they've been together for a while, and they're a team that you just can't really count out. And then my last team in the East that I wouldn't be surprised making a run, and I think this is because of everybody had them going last year and it just didn't happen, and that's the Bucks. I know they've got some holes and that they didn't really fill, and they haven't had nearly as good of a season as they've had the past couple of years. But now, the past 2 or 3 years, people have been saying it's the Bucks. It's the Bucks time. It's the Bucks time. And now people are counting them out. And I could see them kind of flipping the script a little bit and say, okay, now that none of the pressure's on us, let's just go out there and play basketball. And that's who I've got as my top 3 in the East making a run. What about you?
Well, I'll go, from the bottom of my list up. I did not do what you did. I went with who I think is actually going to make a run, not who I think might make a surprise run. And so I start with the Knicks. You said it. I think they've won 9 straight games or something. Yeah. Which is better than the Thunder, who I think have lost 13 straight. So I think the Knicks, there's something finally clicking there in New York.
Which I think it is, Kyle. We know what it is. It's this right here, man. Yeah. It's not only the player. They got Kenny Payne as an assistant basketball coach that had been at Kentucky for the past 7 or 8 years. It's because they're the Kentucky NBA team. That's why they're winning. Okay. Fine. You happy now? I am happy. Feel better? Very happy. Yeah. Okay. I got my Knicks hoodie on order coming in town here.
So I got the Knicks, and then I think these are the top 2 teams in the East. It's the Sixers and it's the Nets. I mean, the Sixers with Joel and Ben Simmons, there are certain places where basketball needs to be really, really good. New York is one of them. Philadelphia is one of them. So New York having both Brooklyn and the Knicks, playing the way they're playing. And then the Sixers, basketball those teams being in the playoffs, those teams, going deep in the playoffs, that's going to make that Eastern Conference playoff picture kind of, maybe not so much the Nets, but especially the Knicks and the Sixers, it kind of looks right. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So those are my 3. I don't see a team in the East beating Brooklyn. I'll be honest.
It's going to be tough. They're awfully stacked.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. All right, let's shift gears to the West really quickly. What you go ahead? Teams you feel like can make a run at the title in the West? Is it pretty? It's pretty top heavy.
Pretty tough. I mean, the Jazz and the Clippers, they are what they are.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot to say there. We all know who they have. We all know what they're about. The one team that's kind of middle of the pack right now that can make a run is obviously the Lakers. I mean, they've been bit by the injury bug all year, and they're just staying afloat. But, I mean, you know as well as I do, get to the playoffs, and that's all that really matters.
Yep.
And so they're not going to be in, I think we're calling it the play-in tournament or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I'm going to bet against LeBron and AD in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. We clearly saw that last year in the bubble. You mentioned the play-in. One of the teams that I think can make a run, and it all depends on players being healthy and what version of Steph you get, is Golden State. If you get the Steph we've seen over the past couple of weeks, I mean, I know it's a 7-game series, but I mean, that Steph Curry can win a series or two if he just decides to go off. So I think Golden State, watch out if they end up making it. I believe they're going to into the play-in. We see it every year in like the NCAA tournament. You get the team in the play-in game, and they get hot and make a run. And again, I know that's 1 game versus 7-game series, but watch out for Golden State. I think you've got 2 of the best players, and teaser here, under the age of 25 in my next 2 with Luka and Devin Booker. So I got Phoenix and Dallas, both exciting teams. I told you before the show, I didn't even realize Phoenix was second in the West. Yeah. My gosh, a couple of years ago, they had the number 1 or number 2 pick in the draft. And so Phoenix is definitely turning around. So I got Phoenix, Dallas, and Golden State in that way. All right. We were going to do top 5 under 25, and we'll go ahead and get into it right now really quickly. We were going to have a guest on the show. We had some miscommunication, and he actually produced a list on his website about this, and that's kind of what brought the intrigue. And I wanted to talk to him about this on their podcast as well. But if you look across the NBA, the top 5 players under the age of 25, I already spoiled it a little bit with mine. I definitely have Luka and Booker. I think Jason Tatum's on that list. I think Zion Williamson, unfortunately, is on that list. I'm not a big fan. But then I also think I got Donovan Mitchell as well for the Jazz. I mean, he's a great player. So those are my 5. Who's your 5 guy?
Yeah, we 4 of our 5 are the same. And I think so. I got Luka number 1, and I mean, let's be honest, Luka and Jokic probably are the 2 best players in the league, like right this very moment.
Right.
Shows you what Europe is doing with basketball.
No
I got Jason Tatum, and I actually have him above Zion. Jason Tatum's proven it. Zion's good. I'm not saying he's not good, but he's 20 years old. He's got a lot of room to grow. He has not reached his potential. Jason Tatum's closer. So, like, in this moment, I'd take Jason Tatum over Zion Williamson. Devin Booker I also have Ben Simmons. What was it? Popovich was quoted as saying something about, sure, if he could shoot, he would be so much better, but he's elite in everything else, so what does it really matter?
Yeah.
And when Pop says something like that, I'll listen to Pop all day long, and so, yeah, Ben Simmons is in my top 5.
Hard to argue, I think, any of those guys being in there, and we'll see what they can all do the rest of the season. All right, one more thing before we go to break, Kyle, that I want to discuss is we've seen over the past week that it happened so quickly. All of a sudden, one night there was talk of this like super league for soccer in Europe, and then literally over the course of like 24, 48 hours, it's all completely fallen apart. People are pulling out of it. There's all these people getting all up in arms. One thing you don't mess with is the European soccer. And so, but they had this whole like super league where they're going to take the top 15 or 16 teams and in Europe and just put them all in one league together as opposed to the EPL and the La Liga and all these different leagues. So it brought me to the question of, if we did a super league for college football, you and I love college football. It's probably our favorite sport. If you did a super league and there's been talk about this, when all the teams were starting to move around conference, they're like, what if we just put them all in one and this might end up being what the college football playoff it looks like later on if they continue to add teams to it. a college football super league. I'll give you top 16 teams, maybe with just a little blurb about every one or every few.
Yeah.
Who do you have? And it doesn't have to be ranked, but just who are your top 16?
Yeah. So when I was looking at this, I actually went and looked at that super league to see how they were picking. And essentially what they did is they had 15 teams that were the founding teams.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had 5 spots that you could play in the domestic leagues. Okay. So the way I looked at it with college football is I said, okay, who are these massive college football programs that would be kind of the founders and the cornerstone of this super league or whatever we want to call it, right?
Yep.
And so I start with kind of the I don't know, the teams you would expect: Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, right? At this moment, that's probably your top 4 programs in the nation. All right, but then you also got to start mixing in some of these. I'll even throw Oklahoma in there and call it a top 5. There's your top 5 programs in the nation. You got to start throwing in some of these blue bloods: Texas, SC, Notre Dame, Michigan. I think they need to get in, and then some that maybe aren't so much blue bloods, but have been at the very top. That's my next group. The ones that have been at the top for a long time, and maybe they're not there anymore, but just their footprint in Division 1A or FCS or FBS college football, that footprint is so large, you got to add them in. So that's USC, Florida, Miami, LSU, Tennessee, Penn State. I went A&M because they are money-wise the largest athletic program, or maybe it's just the largest football program in the nation. And Florida State. So there's my 16. I don't know if I did that well enough, but there's my 16. And a lot of that came down to just history and sustainability on top, and money, because that's really what it all comes down to. That's why the Super League was being done in Europe.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. All right. So I think, in looking at my list, I think we only had 2 differences. I mean, again,
wait. You're a Kentucky fan, so Tennessee's not on your list. Go ahead.
Of course. Yeah. No, Tennessee is definitely not on my list. Not only because I wouldn't type their name out, but because they shouldn't be. So Tennessee, I don't have Tennessee. I think in place of Tennessee, I have Nebraska, because you did not have Nebraska, right?
I didn't have Nebraska. It came down to me with Nebraska versus Florida State, and basically, if Scott Frost can't turn Nebraska around, Nebraska can't be turned around. I mean, I think their location just doesn't do them any good, and they're not playing in Texas every year, which takes away the Texas recruiting base. And going to the Big Ten was a bad move for Nebraska. They should have stayed playing Texas every year so they could recruit Texas. So I went Florida State because they're in Florida and they got all sorts of athletes to recruit.
Yeah, and I've got Florida State on the list as well. The other team that I have, and now that I'm actually thinking about changing this, because I'll be honest, I completely blanked on Penn State. They would be the team. That's the team I also have off. I put Oregon in, and I guess it would be over Penn State, although I would probably put Penn State over Oregon. But it seems like Oregon's had a pretty good tradition of college football. I think they won the very first ever national championship, and so I'm going to go Oregon on my list. But I mean, we both pretty much have the exact same thoughts in terms of what we think that would look like. And it would be awesome.
Look, Oregon's right there. To me, you have Oregon, you have Nebraska. This is going to sound crazy, but like BYU has had a lot of good teams, and you could start to look at BYU a little bit. You could start to look at Auburn that I left off. I feel like I'm missing one. Oh well, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think really when it boils down to it, this list is the haves and the have-nots of college football. Yeah. And these are the programs that have been sustainable. So, it's a pipe dream. It would be awesome if we could create something like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, we kind of have that to a very small extent, because if you look at like the four or five teams that I have at the top of my list, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, those teams are basically always in the college football playoff. Yeah. So it's almost like we have that to a certain extent anyways. All right, we're going to go to a break. We come back, we'll finish up. Kyle, we got to talk about prom. It's prom season, baby.
Prom season.
We'll get to it after the break on Dad's Watching Sports. Coming up next week on Dad's Watching Sports, we're going to change things up a little bit here on the show next week, and we need the help of you guys. That's right, the Dad's Watching Sports Nation. We're going to reach out to you throughout the week for topics of what we should talk about, and it's no holds barred, ask anything, and then Castles and Draper will get into it next week on the show. So a little bit of a different vibe on next week's Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you then. Welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper and Kyle Castles. You heard it during the break. We want you. Yes, I'm talking to you, the person watching or the person listening. We want you involved in the show. Not you, Kyle. Not you. Sorry to be confusing. I was pointing directly at you on our screen. But no, we want the listeners of the show. We want the Dad's Watching Sports Nation to take part in the show next week. So what I'm going to do over the course of the week, we're going to put some Twitter polls out. We're going to put some topic polls out that say, hey, if we had to choose a couple of these topics, what would it be? And then maybe even put out like give us a handful of topics that we throw out as well. So it'll be the dads and others who watch sports program next week, which I'm very excited about. So,
oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
Oh, of course it's gonna be great. So finishing up the show here, Kyle, first off, I've got to get to our favorite part of the program, which is Monkey Knife Fight. And that is a daily fantasy sports gaming website for the casual sports fan. It's simple, fun, and easy to play, Kyle. Users determine which superstars are competing in the day's professional sporting events will record more or less than the contest line provided. That sentence doesn't make sense, but I'm just reading it. Who cares? MKF's daily fantasy prop games play similarly to the salary cap-based games. But without the algorithms, Kyle, you know that math, it's tricky. You just never know. Sometimes you end up having to repeat college algebra twice. It also doesn't have lineups. And most importantly, there are no sharks, Kyle. There are several contests to choose from, none of which require hours of research required on competing sites. That's right, baby sharks. Start with a simple 2 for 2 or go for the highest payouts 100 times and higher by selecting an 8 for 8 more or less contest. Get started right now with 100% match bonus up to $50 with a promo code off the ball. And just for you, Kyle, I'm going to read this sentence again. Does this make sense? Users determine which superstars competing in the day's professional sporting events will record more or less than the contest line provided.
So basically, they have a scoring system for all athletes that are competing in whatever sport they compete in, and you are to pick the athletes and say this athlete is going to perform better than this. This level or not.
Okay.
And if you are right enough times, you win some money.
All right. So next week when I'm reading this, I'm going to pause after the first sentence. Then I'm going to toss it to you to just say what you just said. In all seriousness, thank you to Monkey Knife Fight. We appreciate your participation in our show, and we'll read whatever you send to us. Absolutely. All right, Kyle, quick shout out. We've already talked about the Kentucky, New York Knicks. I have to give a quick shout out to the University of Kentucky women's volleyball team, the 2020 national champions as of last night, knocking off Texas 3-1 in the national championship. Kyle, I have never watched more volleyball in my life than I have watched over the past week. Last night, we're sitting at the lake with some friends of ours. And I'm like, hey, do y'all mind if we just watch the volleyball match? And the whole conversation of the rest of the match was like the wives, like, are you really invested in this? Like, you're really interested in this? And then, of course, throwing out like, oh, you just want to see the shorts and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, like when your team plays for the national championship, I don't care if it's volleyball. I don't care if it's diving. I don't care what you were watching and you're cheering them on. And I did that. And congratulations to Coach Skinner and the Cats. First ever SEC volleyball national champion.
Tune in next week where the dads talk about Kentucky the whole show.
Well, of course we do. Why wouldn't we? That's the best thing to do.
No, I'm with you. If it's your team and there's a championship on the line, then you're invested. You're in it.
Have you ever watched volleyball, Kyle? Like,
So
whether high school or like, whatever.
when I was in college, a lot of I played offensive line, and a lot of the offensive linemen were dating some of the volleyball players. So we would go and watch some matches. My first year over there, or first semester over there, or whenever I was there, whenever.
Okay, so let me ask you:
yeah.
do you know the reason why the one girl wears a different colored uniform?
So I was told that means she plays the position libero, and that means that she can go all over the court where the others can't. They have
very nice, very nice. Not only do you know what she does, you know the term, like the technical term. That's impressive.
Yeah,
because I still don't know what that person does, and the whole night I was like, "Why is she wearing a black uniform?"
Yeah,
instead of white.
Now here's the one thing I will say: I do not understand, and I've had this conversation with other educators, other coaches. Why is it that the shorts have to be so short? It makes zero sense. You can put them in a pair of basketball shorts, and they can do everything that they're already doing.
Yep.
So outside of just like this is what we've always done, I don't see a reason. Like, can we just put them in some longer shorts?
We had that conversation last night as a family. Well, not as a family, but as some group, as some adults. And we all kind of came to that same conclusion. We don't know, but it's a thing that they do. All right. Last couple things here before the end of the show, Kyle. So you shared with me before the show about your weekend, and I was kind of shocked to find out that you went to prom over the weekend.
Prom, yeah.
So tell us about your prom. How'd it go? What'd you wear? Did you buy a corsage? What was the slow dance that you danced to?
So I'm a teacher. I don't know if y'all figured out this show, but I'm a teacher. And
of course you did. You gave us a history lesson to start the show.
Exactly. So so part of being a teacher is you have to work so many outside of the school day events, right? And it's different at every school, but one thing I have learned most of them are you're taking money at athletic events. You're taking money, you're selling tickets, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. What I've learned is if you work prom, you just show up and you sit down and you watch kids act a fool, and then you go home. Now, I tend to work the whole prom. So I got there about 10 minutes to 7 because prom started at 7, and I left there about 10 minutes till 11 because it ended at 11. So I was there the whole time. So that got me 2 of my 4, what we call duties or shifts or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And now let me tell you exactly how I feel. I lived for 2 days during the school year. The first one is prom. Prom is fantastic. I know you're laughing. I don't care. You can laugh at me all you want. But what I will tell you is it is so much fun because these kids are finally in an element where they don't feel like they have to be something for me. They get to be themselves, and I get to see it, and I get to talk to them. The last probably 30 minutes, I was sitting down. There were probably 4 or 5 male students sitting around me, and we were just talking about, how was prom? What are you doing? Because they're all seniors. What are you doing next year? What's your plans? That kind of stuff. And I don't.
Who spiked the punch? Okay, yeah, I get you.
No, but there was no punch to spike. It was water bottles because pandemic.
Pandemic. Yes, of course.
So, it's just a nice, fun time. The second one is graduation for obvious reasons. It's the end of the year. I only teach seniors for the most part. I think I have 1 junior this year. If I have more than 1 junior, then if you're listening and you're one of those juniors, I'm talking about you. You're the one I remember. But I think I only have 1 junior. So I look forward to it because, just the joy and the excitement on graduation day or night is you don't feel it any other time. Yep. Maybe the first pep rally, but I hate pep rallies. So that's a me thing.
All right. So next week on Dad's Watching Sports, we're really getting into Kyle's love for prom and his hatred for pep rallies. There's something there. There's something
there. There's something there.
Yeah.
The big thing with pep rallies is I think they're a waste of time.
Oh, come on, man.
being an athlete, and I mean, we went to the same high school. It felt like we had a pep rally every single home game.
That's
right?
very true. Yeah.
Did that make me play any better or worse? No.
Oh, come on.
It was a
man.
waste of time.
You're breaking hearts.
I know. It's not for me. It's for everybody else. So they get excited for the game and they show up and we can get some money out of the kids. Like, I get it. But,
Come on, Kyle. You mean to say that you didn't get amped up when we gave a little, we are the way. That didn't amp you up, man?
Come on, ta-ha.
That's right. For those of you listening, yeah, so our mascot was the Golden Wave. Very intimidating.
It sounds like urine, but it's not urine.
That's right. Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny. Oh man. All right. We'll get off that topic before it goes down the drain.
Oh, I was gonna say before it gets on you, but whatever.
There you go. All right. Last thing here before we call it quits tonight, Kyle. So I've mentioned a couple of times before we were out this weekend, and I wanted to get your take on this. This is not something that happens all too often, but as a parent, you sometimes catch your children in situations where there are other children present, and I don't want to call it they're like misbehaving or anything, but they're just not following the standard protocol maybe for children. So the classic example, or the example that I'm referring to, is this weekend. Like I mentioned, we were at the lake. We had some friends up there with us, and at most of the meal times, I'm not telling anybody how to parent, but their kids would just kind of wander off, kind of do their own thing, wouldn't necessarily be sitting down. And I told our kids on the way home today, I said, man, I'm really proud of you, because at every mealtime you sat in your chair, you ate your dinner, and then you got up and did your own thing. But as a parent, you're like I caught myself like 2 or 3 times, like, should I feel guilty that my kids are sitting here doing what they're supposed to? Should I let them get up? Should I encourage them to go and play with those other kids? Should I just feel proud that they're actually just sitting here and doing what they're supposed to do? It was kind of a weird situation, kind of awkward, because you never want to be like, oh, well, look, why aren't your kids sitting down here doing this? Mm-hmm. You guys ever catch yourself in anything kind of similarly to that?
Yeah. I actually ran into this a few weeks ago. We were over at some of Lauren's family's friend's house, and there's another kid there that's about Jack's age, around 4. I think he's 4. And all 3 boys are running around the house yelling, screaming, and I grab my 2 and say, y'all come sit down. And I explained to them, like, hey, look, we're not going to be loud. We're not going to yell. We're not going to scream. We're not going to run through the house. And the other little boy started talking while I was trying to tell them this. Yeah, they shouldn't run. I don't know if this is okay, but I didn't care in the moment. I looked at him and said, I don't need your help. I don't need you to talk while I'm talking. And he kept going, and I just looked at him and said, hush. Actually, no, I said, shut your mouth. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm going to raise my kids to do what I find is right. And if that makes someone else uncomfortable, too bad. It is. I'm doing what I think is best for my kids, and if your kid is getting in the way of that, I'm going to probably parent your kid as well.
Well, and that's the thing I ran into, is like there were a couple of times where I was like I almost said something to their kids, like, hey, y'all come sit down. But again, I think I would have been very tempted to do that had our kids gotten up.
Exactly.
But the fact that they sat there and didn't do that. Now, there was a time like when Hayden started to kind of get down, I said, no, Hayden, sit down. You need to finish your food before you get up. And he did. But yeah, that's like the most awkward moment ever, is especially when like the parents are right there and I'm just like, you're not going to do something, and they need to sit down and eat their dinner.
Well, here's the thing. Like, maybe those parents don't think that the kid needs to sit and eat. Maybe the kid can wander back and forth and graze. Like, that's fine. That's the way they parent. As long as your kids are doing what you want them to do, let it go. The minute that kid starts to interfere with what you want your kid to do, then it's time to parent someone else's kid.
No, that's right. Oh man, this reminds me of, and I'm sure anybody listening to this that's a part of a neighborhood that has like a neighborhood Facebook page or any of that kind of stuff. This reminds me of all the garbage that goes on ours, where people are like just like railing on kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like it's unbelievable. So, all right, sir. Well, yeah, it's been a show. So your wife comments, we love friends and parents with us. Uncle Mike needs to tell my kids to finish their meal. That's right. Absolutely. And I will.
I will say, if we're at your house and my kids are up wandering, you have every right to look at any of the three and tell them, sit your tail down and eat.
Nice. I will do that. And I might even tell you to do that. All right, Kyle. Well, it's been good. It's been fun. It's been a good time for everyone. And we will be back next week again. Stay tuned to our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. We're going to be sending out some topics for you to vote on for next week throughout the week. Until then, this has been the Dads Watching Sports. We'll see you later.